Hello, everyone. Hello, I'm Twyla. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I'm a radio host. I'm a life coach. I'm Coach Twyla, the Get Your Happy Back divorce coach. Thank you all so very much for tuning in tonight. And listen, today's show is going to be phenomenal. I have an amazing guest with me, but today's show is our happy divorce. Have you or anyone you know experienced divorce like myself? I'm a 14-year post divorcee now. And if you have, we know that divorce is typically very, very contentious and stressful, right? So, regardless of who initiated the divorce, it can be very, very contentious. Well, today, my special guest has an amazing story and he is here to share with us about his story, his happy divorce story. So, right now, I'd like to welcome my special guest, Mr. Ben Heldfond, to Divorce Talk with Twyla. Hi, Ben. There
Hi,
you
Tyler. How are
are.
you? Hey, we figured it out.
Yes. yes. I'm so glad and excited to have you on Divorce Talk with Twyla show. It's a privilege, it's an honor, and definitely a pleasure for you to be here to share your story. And with the guests, as a guest, and the listeners and viewers are ready to hear from you on tonight. So, Ben, if you would just introduce yourself and share with our viewers a little bit about your story and who you are, what you do, and as much information as you want to share, the floor is yours.
Wow. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, first of all, for having me on. I think we talked a couple of months ago and immediately sort of had a connection and love what you're doing. I do have to say that I feel a little naked here tonight. As you know, our happy divorce isn't just me, it's my ex wife, Nikki DeBartolo, who unfortunately couldn't be here to do this with me. And she's, since we put out the book and we've been doing this thing, she's been right alongside with me the whole time. And the reason that we have a happy divorce, and we can sit here and talk about it for like you, 14 years later, we were exactly
Yeah.
14 years
Yeah.
divorced, is because it took two of us. And it took, just like it took two of us to ruin our marriage, or to end our marriage, it took two of us to make our post-divorce happy divorce. And so she's not here. So,
No. And we
but
miss
but
her. Yes.
yeah, we miss her. But don't worry, I won't talk too bad about her. She's not here to defend her. But if she were here, I would talk bad about her. But she could be here to defend herself. But our marriage ended like so many others, and so many others that are contentious. And it had, I think, all divorces sort of are a petri dish and an opportunity for a high conflict divorce, because they're dealing with so many emotions. So many of the negative emotions of fear, hurt, loneliness, unknown, uncertainty, and that causes a lot of problems in people's lives. And when decisions are made, off of those emotions, I think is when divorce can get very contentious and high conflict. And Nick and I, we ended our marriage. It didn't end on a winning streak. How it ended or why it ended doesn't really matter
Right.
to us, because one of the reasons that we can talk about our happy divorce and be on the show is because we stopped making decisions off of whose fault it was, or who did what, or who ended the marriage, and we were able to move forward. And I think one of the secrets to what we did was we dealt with that emotional side of it first.
Mhm.
I was a child of a high conflict divorce,
Wow.
um, growing up in the 80s, 13 years old. And
Yeah.
um, I think there was only really one way of doing it, and that was general warfare.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, kids, in my experience, my brothers and sisters and I became the collateral damage,
Wow.
of that war. And it was a terrible place to grow up in, terrible environment, terrible space
Mhm.
to grow up in.
Mhm.
And yet, even with all that and that experience, when Nikki and I broke up or decided to end our marriage, and this should, I hope to show people the power of these emotions that we're talking about, is that
Right.
I was still willing to take our son through that process, because I went out. My first phone call was to a well-researched lawyer, the best
Mhm.
lawyer in the town we lived in, and I told him what I wanted, and that was to destroy Nikki, and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
blindly, and not tapping into the experience that I had with a kid, as a kid, as I was going to put Asher, our son, on my back and take him down that same path.
Wow.
And luckily, this lawyer wrote up this. I call it War and Peace game plan,
Mhm.
Nikki destruction, 30 pages. Um,
Yeah.
and I started reading it. It was in my backpack for about 2 weeks, didn't read it. And I was on a red eye back from LA to Florida. And I took it out, and I don't know what it was, right? I don't know if it was because it was 3 in the morning, or those LED, not even LED, but those light bulbs on the airplane, or
Yeah.
people snoring next to me. I don't know what it was, but I started reading it, and I only got about 2 pages into it. And at that moment, for the first time in my life, not first time in my life, but first time in a long time, I was able to
Mhm.
get honest with myself,
Mm.
and also tap into that experience, that I had as a kid, and I realized that there's no way that this could all be Nikki's fault. There's just no way in the history of the human
Wow.
relationships that when a relationship ends, that it's one person's fault. Um,
Exactly.
and then the second part of it was the understanding, and the awareness that I knew where this movie ended.
Mhm.
I knew through my own experience as a kid growing up, I knew what it was going to mean for our son. So I just had to find a different way. And I
Wow.
put the thing away. I didn't read any more, but a couple pages, put it
Mhm.
away, and then called, him on Monday and said, thank you, but no thank you. Um, and then the second call was actually the call that I recommend that everybody make instead of the first call to the lawyer, and that was
Okay.
to a therapist. And
Perfect.
right, and
Yeah.
today, we didn't have the resources that are available today, but or there might have been, but I just maybe didn't look. All I knew was
Mhm.
therapy, or to a
Mhm.
coach, or just somebody just to help me, call balls and strikes and figure out what was going on, and to work on my side of the street. And Nikki, if she were sitting here too, she would say that she did the same thing.
Wow.
And that's where the foundation, sort of, our happy divorce started, was working on the emotional side of it, and
Mhm.
dealing with our part and taking accountability. And then I called Nikki one day and I asked her to coffee, and I had to clean up. I had to do some repair, because I had
Yeah.
figured out during therapy, um, the sobering realization that I wouldn't want to be married to me either.
Wow.
That I wasn't the man, I wasn't the father, I wasn't the person that I had, imaged in my head, and it was too easy for me to point the finger at Nikki and say it was all her fault. It was all her fault.
Wow.
And so I had to make repair, and I called her a coffee, and I made amends to her. And look, at that moment, after, and she actually apologized to me too, and she had done some work. And um, look, we didn't walk out of that coffee shop with roses and sunshine, and everything was perfect. But there just was, there was just some room, some space. All of a sudden, when
Mhm.
you have something going on in your life, and you have that weight on your chest, and it
Yes.
just feels like the elephant sitting on your chest. All of a sudden, that elephant was lifted, and there was just it was easier to breathe.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what, our happy divorce was based on, is accountability, and forgiveness, and just a tad of compassion.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Ben, you said so much. I'm over here taking notes because I want to go back to a couple of things.
Right.
And me being a life coach, that's what I do is out on the side.
Mhm.
And I tell
Along with
people
your
that,
other many hats, right?
yes, I tell people that as well. Get in some therapy.
Yeah.
Yes, you may make the first phone call maybe to an attorney because you're emotionally wrapped up in wanting to end the marriage or what have you, or but therapy is so important. Self-care, right? because you just said a minute ago about you had to take some accountability. There's no way it could just be one person's fault. And that's so true. But marriage does not end just by one person. You both parties play some part in it, right? Regardless if we want to admit it or not. And we're not going to go through reasons why this
Right.
isn't this type of conversation. But if we have folks listening that may feel like it was all the other person's fault, no, no, no. What role did you play in it, right? There was
Right.
some role that we all played in a marriage ending. And then secondly, you talked about the apology and forgiveness. That is so imperative.
Yeah.
Being able to forgive, and that doesn't happen overnight, right, Ben? That's a
No,
process.
that saying you're sorry is the easy part, right? Acting and changing behaviors is the hard part. And so many times Nikki and I had this pattern or this dynamic where something would happen, she'd apologize, I'd apologize,
Mhm.
or whatever, but nothing changed, right? And so saying you're sorry, I'm sure she had trepidation or a little
Yeah.
guard up when I did,
Yeah.
and vice versa. But there was just something different about that moment, and I
Wow.
do want to just have a little side note here that there's
Yeah.
stuff outside of our pay grade when I say that it's two people's fault or two
Mhm.
people or have a part in it. There
Yeah.
are some asterisks, sexual abuse, physical abuse that just are
True.
outside our realm of what we're talking about here. So I think it's important.
Absolutely. Thank you for that side note.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
and so what marriage affairs, neglect, whatever it is, like, yes, somebody does something, somebody backs out, somebody acts in, whatever it might be, but there's a reason for that, and it's not a justification of the
Right.
behavior, right? I didn't, or she didn't forgive me for any behavior. I didn't forgive her for any behavior. But we couldn't move forward if we didn't clean up the wreckage of what each of us had done, during our marriage.
Right. Right. And you definitely didn't want your son, like you stated, you were a product of a very toxic, contentious divorce, and you did not want your son to be in that same environment. So I
Yeah,
applaud
and,
you for that.
and it's it caused again, not blaming my parents, but what it did for me, and hopefully the viewers who are watching this or will watch this will understand that I was 12 years old. My parents came and they sat us down at the kitchen table and they said, "Mom and Dad are getting divorced," and there was an
Mhm.
event. That was the event.
Wow.
Unfortunately, nothing followed the event. Right, there was no space uh, for us as children. I was the second oldest, so there was two behind me and one ahead of me.
Mhm.
uh, there was no space for us to express our truth. There was no
Wow.
space for us to express how we felt in this. And parents are getting divorced, and that was it. Mom's going to live here, dad's going to live here. You're going to spend Wednesdays with dad and every other weekend with dad. Good luck. So, at, as a child,
Mhm.
these feelings were new, right? I didn't know how to
Yeah.
deal with these feelings. So, uh, I learned how to internalize, and I internalized them, and I was like,
Mhm.
this isn't good. This is bad. This
Yeah.
doesn't feel good. This feels bad. Um, and I turned that into I must be bad.
Hmm.
And it had something to do with me. And whenever I would try to speak my truth or express how I felt, it was
Mhm.
quickly shut down by, oh, you don't know what your dad has put me through. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what mom's put me through. And so it is a
Wow.
really, really crappy, and I use that word,
Yeah.
there's many other words I could use, but uh, place to grow up in. So I was able, luckily, to tap into that. I mean, even though for a minute there, and that's the power of what we're dealing with. That's the power of these emotions and why they need to be dealt with by therapists, by coaches, because with all that being said, all that stuff I just said about my experience as a kid, I
Mhm.
was still going to bring my son through that same hell.
Yeah. Like a cycle,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, wow, wow. Because that's what you experienced. And your son was about to go through it again, but the same thing. And
Hmm.
no.
And he would have.
Wow. Go ahead.
Yeah, and he would have. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
there's no escaping for children a high conflict divorce.
No, not at all. Not at all. Wow, wow, wow. So, Ben, I want to ask you this. We might have folks listening, and they use kids, they use the children as pawn, and what is your dad doing? What is your mom doing? All that kind of stuff. What kind of advice or recommendations or suggestions that you would tell people that may be in that space, because they are in a situation where they're going through a contentious divorce and they're not where you are just yet? But what
Right.
can you tell them?
Well, I think first it's important to realize that I don't think anybody's doing it. And that's one thing that I had to realize with my own
Mhm.
parents' divorce. Uh, Nobody's doing it intentionally. Nobody's, after my parents sat us down at the kitchen table and told us that they were getting divorced, they didn't excuse us and then sit down and say, okay, how are we going to screw up our kids' lives the rest of their lives, right? Like, how are we going to
Right.
cause them
Yeah.
pain, right? So
Yeah.
it's not premeditated. So because I was going through it, so I understand how people do it. But I think it's important to understand that um, our kids didn't pick the restaurant. They didn't
Mhm.
order the wine. They didn't
Right.
order the food. They didn't order the dessert and so on and so forth. And yet they get stuck with the emotional bill. They get stuck with the bill to pay.
Mhm.
And it's just not. Um, when they had no choice. They had no choice. Like my son, myself, I had no choice in any of the proceedings.
Right.
Whether Asher, our son, didn't choose for Nikki and I to meet. He didn't choose for us to get married. To have him to get divorced,
Yeah.
and yet so many times kids get held holding the emotional bill. And I think for Nikki and I, um, what we did right looking back on it, and again, we're
Mhm.
not doctors, we're not there, or not
Yeah.
again, but I think it's important to say that we're not therapists, lawyers, doctors. We're just people who seem to have gotten it right, and are just sharing our experience. So I think
Yeah.
what Nikki and I did right, um and maybe this might sound a little harsh to people who are going through it, but we put on our big boy pants. We put on our,
That's
we
good.
we swallowed our pride, we swallowed
Yes.
our ego, um, and we truly did what was best for us, realize or what was best for Asher, realizing that he didn't have any choice in this. He was an innocent bystander.
Yeah.
And so after the coffee shop meeting, after we sort of worked out our divorce arrangement,
Mhm.
um, we, like I said, put on our big boy pants, and we say, and this is our clinical, this is as far as our clinical studies go, is we faked it
Mhm.
until we made it. you know that not a clinical saying, but if Asher had a school event, if he had a play, if he had a sporting event, we would sit next to each other. Because that was important to me, because I remember after a
Wow.
play, or after one of my sporting events, is mom would be sitting over here and dad would be sitting in Siberia. They couldn't be sitting further apart from each other, right? and,
That was
and it
my experience, Ben.
right, and let
My
me tell you the
son.
experience of a
Dad.
kid,
Yeah.
having to walk over and think to myself, okay, I think I said hi to dad. I think I went over to dad first last time. So I should go over to mom, right?
Mhm.
Or did I go over to mom first? I can't, oh God, I can't remember. And so Nikki and I sat, did little things like sat next to each other at Asher's event. So when he came
Mhm.
over, mom and dad were smiling, not really, probably, probably really awkwardly, and
Yeah.
it hadn't turned into that making it part, but we just put aside our stuff, our
Wow.
feelings, our emotions, our maybe not liking each other that much at that point, aside,
Mm.
and truly put Asher as our North Star and our guiding light. And then somewhere along the line, I can't tell you when, any particular moment. Like, I can't be specific, like at the plane, moment of clarity, but
Uh-huh.
it switched. It
Wow.
switched into making it, and then I realized that I kind of like her. And then I
Mm.
realized that, what, I love this woman, and here we are 14 years later, and talking about our happy divorce.
Wow. That is an amazing story. Wow, wow, wow. Oh my goodness. That just gives me chills. I remember when we first talked, I thought, oh my gosh, that is amazing. I love it. And going back to the child part, yeah, it places the kid in a situation, in a compromised situation, really, because it's like, okay, mom and dad, I know they're divorced. I'm over here with mom, and now I'm over here with dad. So yeah, same. When my son Ben
Hmm.
he played football from Pee Wee all the way up through high school. And when it happened, his dad and I got divorced. I was like your parents, and way across the. Sometimes
Hmm.
I even sat on the opposing team's side. Just I mean, isn't that crazy?
Right.
Just
Right.
to be as far away from him as possible.
Hmm.
And then I thought, you know what, this is crazy. And so I started doing things a little different too. And I thought, this is insane. Why, but like you said, we fake it till you make it, and it just changes. And some people may be listening or viewing this not now or later, thinking, "Wow, that a light bulb just went off for them." Because what you
Yeah.
just said
Or
is powerful.
right, or the other side of it, and I completely understand and want to acknowledge it, that they're sitting there going, "Yeah, they're full of crap. Like, there's no way." Or they're saying, they might be saying, "Yeah, but my ex is this or my ex is that." And believe me, like, this is where, if that's the thought process, this is a land of, rainbow waterfalls and unicorns, right? To some
Yeah.
people, of like the unbelievable. And I think it's important to say that if you had told us 14 years ago, that I would be sitting here on a Tuesday, Monday night, talking to you about a book that I wrote with Nikki called Our Happy Divorce, and this life that we live, I would have told you you're out of your mind. I would have been that person. I would have been that person listening to this, podcast, or this live stream, going, "No way, this guy's full of crap. Like, he's trying to sell books, or
Yeah.
there's no way it can be real, right?" And
Right.
so, I just want to hope people leave some space for possibility, right? Some space for,
Mhm.
realize that this was a 14-year journey. This didn't happen overnight. This was
Mhm.
years of, like I said, sitting at, games, and sitting at plays, or whatever it is, or drop offs, and just,
Mhm.
putting on our big boy pants, our fake smiles,
Yeah.
and everything else, and just say, it's not about us. It's not about, our, feelings right now. This is about our son. This is about somebody we, made a conscious decision to bring into this world.
Right.
And 14 years later, yes, it is real. I'm not lying. I don't need to be here, on a Monday night,
No.
and so, we are, selling hope, and, that's it. That just maybe leave some space for the possibility of possibility.
Yeah, it can happen, and folks, it does happen.
Mhm.
Ben, how old was Asher? He said it's been 14
He
years.
yeah, he was 4,
Okay.
around 4,
So he's
and
18 now.
he's 18 years
All
old now,
right.
and, he is beyond, just a great kid, and I think, uh, because of the divorce, one thing that we did with him, which I would encourage
Mhm.
families to do, just from my own experience, as growing up. I think I told the story of the event
Yeah.
was told to us, and then there was nothing. We've always tried to give Asher, because of my experience and,
Mhm.
communication with Nikki, space for him to
Yeah.
speak his truth. And when things
That is
are
awesome.
tough, we got him into therapy, because he was 4, and whether you're 4 or 14,
Right.
there's still feelings that are, or 18 or 25 or whatever.
Yeah.
When your parents break up, it's hard, and it's confusing, and especially for somebody of his age. So we've always given him space, to speak his truth, or to say what he wants or what he needs, and some of that stuff is hard.
Yeah.
Even today, like, I think it was Saturday night. He said, I want to spend, I want to sleep tonight at mom's because Chad, Nikki's husband, and him were going to watch a movie. Right. And
Yeah.
instead of, oh, hell no, that's my day,
Yeah.
or making him feel guilty about wanting to go, I go, great. We'll just get together tomorrow. Now, I'm not some spiritual giant, Twyla. Like, this isn't something that
Right.
just landed softly on me. And this is 14 years later. Like, it was hard. It's hard to hear that.
Yeah.
I'd be completely, inauthentic if I didn't say that still burns.
Yeah.
But, but, but it's not about me.
It's
Right.
not. Yeah.
And so he's able to say that. He's able to, 3 years ago, we were on a fishing trip, and he out of nowhere he says, this divorce is hard on me.
Wow.
And this is the reaction of the ego, and this will
Wow.
tell you the difference, right, of the two
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
reactions. At least the thought. And I didn't say this, but the thought was, you have no idea, you ungrateful little, of what a hard divorce is, right?
Wow.
But I was able to sort of stop, before I reacted, and
Yeah.
just, live his experience, because it is tough.
Yeah.
As great as it, Nikki and I have it, as great as, the divorce could be, it's called our happy divorce.
Right.
It's still not his choice. It's still, if it were up to him, we would still be together, right? If it were up to him, he wouldn't have to go to another house every 4 or 5 days. He wouldn't have
Right.
to forget his books, even though we live 5 houses down from each other. But
Wow.
just the logistics
Yeah.
of divorce are
Yeah.
hard on a child.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the beautiful thing of that story is not my reaction, but the fact that he was able to speak his truth, and
Right.
he's been doing that for 14 years now, because we've given him that space.
That is awesome. And so many people may not. And
Hmm.
kids need to be able to speak their truth. And therapy is, oh gosh, I say that word 1,000 times a day, it seems like.
You know why?
Therapy
Because
is so
it works.
imperative.
It really works.
It does work.
Yeah.
It does work. And not only on you, but it works on them as well, and because if behaviors change, your behavior change, their behavior is eventually going to change. It may not happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. Right. So,
Right.
wow,
Yeah. I
wow,
mean, when not given that opportunity, and again, this is just my experience, but because I wasn't given that opportunity, I talked about, "Ooh, this is bad," and I
yeah,
turned that into, "I must be bad," which turned into, "I'm broken," which
wow.
turned into, me walking away around my life with this feeling of brokenness, that I was wrong. There was
Mm,
something wrong with me, and that led
mm,
to, not led to, because I believe that it was there. I just sort of, in parents divorce, maybe add a little sprinkle, Miracle Grow to it, but the disease of alcohol and drug addiction,
wow.
um, I quickly learned how I could use the divorce in my, sort of, my criminal mind, if you will. And,
Mhm.
I knew they weren't talking. So I used them, what time does mom let you stay out? Oh, 2. Oh, well, stay out till 3. Right. Because they weren't parenting for parent of the year. They were parenting from a position of favorite parent. Right. Or when it
Right.
came to allowance. And so my, disease accelerated, until, I was lucky to get sober at 21 years old. But that's some of the effects that can happen on kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
and for me, that's how I dealt with this feeling of brokenness, or this feeling of something's wrong with me. Is I guess I had a spiritual problem that I tried to find a chemical solution to for many years. It didn't work.
Didn't work. No, a lot
No.
of people
Yeah.
turn that way they internalize it, and they, like you said, turn to alcohol, drugs, or anything just to suppress their feelings or to deal with that they're going through. So, wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, Ben, my goodness. Well, folks, this has been an amazing conversation, Ben. And I just wanted you to share with people how they can connect with you. I know you're out there, you and Nikki are on social media. You've got a book. Y'all are just doing some amazing things and helping so many people that you may not even know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything, is at Our Happy Divorce. We have a website, we have the book. I just told you the book.
Mm.
So basically, it's about putting on your big boy pants, showing accountability and some repair, and putting your kids first, and what it looks like to put your kids first. I think that, at least I could find myself when I was in the space before,
Mhm.
using uh, manipulating that for what's best for Asher or what's best for our son, when really it was what was best for me.
Mhm.
And I just encourage people to have the understanding that there's two sides, two pieces of divorce. There's the
Mhm.
emotional side, and then there's the business side, right?
Yep.
And what Nikki and I did right is we dealt with the emotional side first before we got into the business side. And so that's, a lot of our social media is to give people tips on what we did. It doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, but if you
Right.
walk away from this or anything we do with just a little bit of hope, um, then we've done our jobs. And it's not our jobs, by the way. We're not. This isn't a career for us, but we are there to help people. And if you need have any questions, you can reach out to us, on social media. Again, everything at Our Happy Divorce.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I love it. You worked on you first and then dealt with the business side, because once you dealt with the business side, the emotions had calmed down significantly. That is
Right.
awesome. And that is where your happy divorce came from. So,
Right. And Our Happy Divorce is just really also just say that it doesn't, I think what we've learned over these, past couple of years is
mhm.
Our Happy Divorce looks like it what it did for Nikki and I, but it also can look in so many shapes, sizes, and
I
different
know.
ways. But the bottom line, of what in our minds what makes a happy divorce is if you're not handing your child the emotional bill or your children the emotional bill for
That's
them to pay for your adult decisions.
so awesome. Love that. Love that. Love that. Well, Ben, thank you so very much for being with me on tonight. And it's been an amazing conversation. And I'm sure if people watching it now or later will gain something from this conversation. So thank you so much. And don't forget, Ben and Nikki are out there at Our Happy Divorce on social media.
Thank you for having me, Twilight. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a good one. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye. Wow, y'all, that was an amazing conversation tonight. So, guess what? Next week is the last episode for the season. I am doing a solo show and I'm going to wrap up a lot of shows. My goodness, been doing this since July, right? And there's a lot of information, a lot of amazing guests that were on the show that talked so many good things and so many great conversations and so many topics. So that's next week. It's just me. And don't forget, there will be giveaways and more. So don't miss it. So until next week, this is Coach Twyla, the Get Your Happy Back Divorce Coach. Divorce Talk with Twyla is out.